Hello. This here is a bit of reflection on recently playing Tiny Dungeon, which is that fellow. And I played at Spielen's Hoos, and it was very much kind of a open catch-as-catch-can gaming situation, to the extent that my play partner was my son Jonathan, age 10, and about halfway through the session, maybe a little sooner than that, a couple other friends hopped in, sat down, and freely commented and sort of participated without playing characters, enjoying themselves. So it was pretty lively. To keep things interesting, Jonathan played two characters, and I had him make them up through the book. And one of them he chose was the Salamar race, which is the kind of classy lizard people who don't really look like the old school lizard men. They're a little more inhumanly proportioned, kind of big salamander, newty looking guys. And he, feeling combative, basically made the dude a missile range specialist, choosing to, as we did, to interpret the crossbow as a rocket launcher for fun. So, okay, using the crossbow rules. And also a trap master. So he had that guy, and then I said, how about another fellow to, keep him company? And he said, sure, and made up a dwarf with an axe-wielding kind of dude with the dungeoneer skill. So, these are pretty delving, crawling kind of guys, and that's fine. I carry around maps by Dyson Logos on a sort of habitual basis, and so I seized one, and then I looked at it and said, well, that's more gun than I need. So instead reached into a couple other maps I have handy for other purposes, for a reuse of the Red Eye Temple from the somewhat controversial RuneQuest product Griffin Island, not Mountain. But it's a nice map, and I chose it, happily pulled it out and said, okay, here you are. Came up with the notion that our poor heroes have simply been through an unfortunate encounter with some kind of culty dude, have been materialized in the lava fountain in the big holy room in the Red Eye Temple. Poof, there they are. Owie, owie. The Salamar is immune to heat and lava and fire and stuff like that, and so that's cool. The dwarf has his pants on fire, and the cultist is happily proclaiming about how their souls shall belong to him, and is invoking his beautiful one to come through the doors, my pretty, for their souls. Well, that's a pretty good start. And things proceeded from there. Now, I want to move on to talking really about using these rules. I've been looking forward to this. The Alan Barr's work on the Tiny series has garnered attention, but that's not really my interest. I'm not punditing or reviewing. I'm more interested in just playing it, because the real question is, do we have fun with the dungeon crawl thing? I'm not front-loading the answer. I just want to do it. And I want to see whether associations with specific rules and the dungeon crawl experience are related. They may not be. I don't think they are necessarily. So here we go. Working my way through. And one of the interesting points that you may or may not know is that this is all about playability. And number one about that is that the rolling is extremely generic. You roll a handful of dice, and insofar as you get a 5 or a 6 on anything, it's a success. Then you modify that with advantage, adds dice, disadvantage, which knocks them down, and trumps advantage, by the way. If you have disadvantage, then having advantage or not is nulled. And then there's also a couple of things like focusing your rocket launcher, for example. Take a moment to do that. You get a success on 4, 5, or 6. So, all right, stuff like that here and there. Basically, roll the same thing Saves, for example, are, crap dice at a disadvantage. So maybe just all the way down to 1 if you don't have, for example, Trapmaster, in which case you can, roll with advantage. So forth and so on. It's fairly straightforward to apply in any circumstance. And the other interesting thing is that armor is just for show. So basically, screw armor. Wear all you want and enjoy the looks and carry on from there. You get hit, you take damage. We're done. A few other things. Initiative is extremely mechanical. You roll some dice, add up the total this time, actually add, and then that sets the order, and you just run it by the order as you go through. It's pure practicality. There's no attempt at managing that particularly. And then there's a few other interesting points about magic is handled very much on the fly in terms of content. There are different ways you do magic, and so the style of it affects the fiction greatly, but not what can I do. It's like, well, say so. So as you can see, this is pretty improv-y in lots of ways, and getting through the playable material is more important than sort of constructing how it should be done out of the available components at the moment. Okay, or at least rather the grain of doing so is quite coarse, and the moving parts are supposed to be transparent and easily seen and easily moved. So, okay, good enough. What are some things that I experienced and watched with Jonathan in particular, who has, as all children his age, way too much training from platforming games and from a variety of different, PlayStation experiences and stuff. But he's really, really interested and started doing it himself and started commenting on it afterward about his contributions, why it was that a role went a certain way. So retrofitting a given role result to the circumstances, and then also suggesting circumstances of the moment that work directly from what's known. So if this is happening, then, well, if the lava well is, as I describe it, projecting upward, as depicted in the picture, and as I've described, projecting upward. So it's really like, a well standing there on the floor, and then you're standing in it, and it's full of lava, and your pants are on fire. Okay, so, doing something involving like the lip of the well, stuff like that. Defining the activity so that when it succeeds or fails, there's a great deal of material there to use as relevant to the consequences. And he started doing that, bringing in stuff like that. I said, cool, now that we know that, okay. And so afterward he commented, he was like, this isn't like a screen game at all. You're actually influencing the whole staging. I mean, I'm paraphrasing here, but you're influencing the whole staging of what happens and what you can try and stuff like that as you go. And anybody can do it. It's not like, just I have to sit here and listen. There's a certain amount of, he was really cluing in that there's a dialogue about this, and I kind of liked it, and I actually hadn't anticipated this. I liked it that he didn't always do that in terms of just optimization. He was doing it because it made everything going on more vivid, and he didn't know how that particular event was going to play in for good or ill because the role was involved. And he was good with that. He was like, well, this could be a good thing or a bad thing. So it makes sense that it's going on. So now we're going to roll to see how that works out for me.